Wednesday, September 28th, 2016, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I like to talk about geopolitics today and the big picture in the world, especially the Western world, which is the United States, Western Europe, even Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's the part of the world that's been dominant through the U.S. leadership since the end of World War II. So, and the reason I'm talking about that is that there's an article, an opinion piece by Martin Wolf in the Financial Times. And Martin Wolf is a mouthpiece for the globalists. He attends the Bilderberg meetings every year, and yeah, he's very, how can I say, establishment. You know, if someone is establishment in the media, it's Martin Wolf. He is a British writer for the FT, of course. And his the title of his latest piece about, excuse me, global politics is How the West Might Soon Be Lost. And then, you know, the subtitle is Under a President Trump, Democracy Will Lose Credibility as a Model for a Civilized Political Life. So that's what Martin Wolf thinks. First of all, I'd like to say I'm not here backing any candidate for the U.S. presidency. I think both of them are symptoms of what's going on in the West, and especially the U.S. and the West in general. Hillary Clinton represents the establishment, that we've had for the last 35 years, and Donald Trump represents the anger of the average person, average voter, average taxpayer. The anger that's grown since the 2008 crisis. The anger that's come out, the more and more people really learn what happened and what's been happening under the so-called capitalist system, which is more like a crony capitalist system where the bankers and the people in the financial sector were saved even though they didn't deserve to be saved. They were saved by the establishment, by the institutions that are supposed to run a fair and open and capitalist system. Institutions like government and the central banks and the regulators, they all covered it all up to save themselves in 2008. That's why there's that anger. So why am I talking about Martin Wolf's article? He doesn't get it. He doesn't get that people are twigging on to the fact that the establishment has used, the people through, heavy taxation, through the inflationary money printing, financialization, through QE. They've used that to save themselves, and they've created anger. So looking at what he says here, and I quote, Martin Wolf says, sometimes history jumps. Think of the First World War, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Great Depression, the election of Adolf Hitler, the Second World War, the beginning of the Cold War, the collapse of the European empires, Deng Xiaoping's reform and opening up of China, the demise of the Soviet Union, and the financial crisis of 07-09 and subsequent Great Recession. And he goes on to say, we may be on the brink of an event as transformative as many of these, the election of Donald Trump as president. This would mark the end of the U.S.-led West as the central force in global affairs. The result would not be a new order. It would be perilous disorder. The thing Mr. Wolf doesn't understand is that Donald Trump is not to blame for, the problems we have in the West, which are high unemployment, high debt levels, rising cost of living, high inequality, where you have the masses of people with no wealth or very little income, and you've got a very small minority that's got all the wealth and all the income, a bit like a third world country, like Brazil or India. That's how the West is becoming. And so he's blaming Donald Trump. He's not, he's blaming Donald Trump for the fact that people are angry about that. He's actually not looking at himself in the mirror, because he represents, the establishment which has created this. I know that people, it took two to tango during the subprime, boom and everything. People had to borrow the money, from the bankers, and they thought, but the people trusted these supposed experts. They were told that they could have the house and that, they wouldn't be paying much, but they forgot to tell them about, the adjustable rates and the fact that they'd be paying a lot more eventually. So the other interesting thing about this article, I won't read it all to you, is my opinion, the comments of the subscribers. I personally don't subscribe to the FT, but I've got access to the comments here on the internet, and the most popular recommended comment is this one, and it's from a guy called Mark GB, and he takes a quote from Martin Wolf's article, and it says, "In business, he's a serial defaulter, and a dozen other crimes later, he admires the former KGB agent who runs Russia." That's what Martin Wolf says about Trump. So now I'll read the comment, which has been, has been the most popular comment from the FT subscribers. It says, "I agree with many of the items on your crime sheet, Mr. Wolf. Indeed, the fact that the U.S. has a braggadocio running for office is not great news for a great nation. The great nation that threw a bunch of corrupt cronies out of their fat backsides 240 years ago in the name of liberty, self-determination, and aversion to parasites definitely deserves something better than what's on offer here. On the other hand, they also deserve something far better than Hillary Clinton." The afterthought in this article, who also has a list of crimes as long and as egregious as Mr. Trump's, though sadly these do not seem of interest to the FT, perhaps because they might suck energy and oxygen away from the Trump rants. The thing that you still don't seem to get, Mr. Wolf, indeed none of your colleagues do, is that Donald Trump is a symptom of a disease. He's not the disease itself. His rise is a backlash against corruption that has been eating away at Western liberal democracy from the inside for decades. Cronyism, government by the elites for the elites, administered through a corrupt financial system, a bought and paid for Congress, and a judicial system that has one set of rules for the poor and another for the rich. Donald Trump is not the perfect symptom. He is not the perfect backlash, but by a long shot, not by a long shot, but he is the thing, Mr. Wolf. But here's the thing, Mr. Wolf, you don't get to choose. You are never likely to cheer for anyone that threatens the reign of the status quo, no matter how polite and respectable they may be. But calling it the end of democracy? No, it's an expression of democracy, Mr. Wolf. It's just that you don't like it. So very interesting. So what do I get from Mr. Wolf's article and the comments? And I have to say some of the comments agree with Martin Wolf, but have to say that the majority are quite critical of him. So what do I get from how the West might be lost? I agree with Mr. Wolf, how the West might soon be lost. But it's not because of Donald Trump's election. It's because, as Hank Paulson said in there's a documentary about the financial crisis. I forgot the name, but they have in this documentary, there's a meeting at the New York Fed with Hank Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary at the time. He's got like all the heads of the big banks sitting around the table, and he's standing up talking to them. And he actually says, and I quote, he says, "The West is fucked." That's what he says. And the reason, and the West has been able to buy time for the last 8 years. So it's not going to be Trump who brings down the West. The West itself, the establishment, has brought itself down by its own actions and policies. So yes, I agree with Mr. Wolf that the West might be lost soon. Actually, I think it will be lost soon. It's already losing itself, but it's not Trump's fault. And again, I'm not endorsing any candidates. I'm just looking at the situation. So if you enjoy my videos, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. If you like to donate, I accept Bitcoins. I accept payments through PayPal, Patreon, and links are in the description below for the donations. Thanks for watching. Bye.